Gonna try again to make a video on the statement, what is the world? If an artist were to say this to you, how would you respond? Skeptically, but also receptively. I think it's a great idea if you're convinced that historical knowledge is going to not only teach you about the past, but empower you the prophecy to better behave in the future. Sure. But the claim itself is riddled in contradiction and unstated premises. The sentence reduces to the where is the when. Why is that? World is primarily a spatial concept. Its interrogative category is where. Music, on the other hand, is primarily temporal. So if we had to categorize it interrogatively, we would say, well, it refers to the bigger concept, when. Whoever says the world is music assumes that we're asking, what is the world? Okay, that's great if you assume that world is this concept that has to be defined and redefined, whether exactly or metaphorically, as human intellectual knowledge surges forth in the currents of history, because the world is music, right? No. The world is music, or whoever states this, assumes that world is first concept, so that some spatial concept is worth more than all others. But since we think about the relative values of key words in philosophy, or the values of concepts, we're actually thinking more about how much. Or if we assume that action is the first concept, then we note that interrogative categories like where, when, who, why, and so on, that these reduce to aspects of every action. Can you think of an example of how world has been, at least historically, a very key concept? Arthur Schopenhauer wrote a book, The World as Will and Representation. Martin Heidegger has a key term, being in the world, which he refers to in being and time. What I would advocate is questioning whether world or the world is even a key concept to address. If we just say the world is X, the world is Y, we don't question the number of this concept world, we just say the world, like we refer to some named entity without a specific name, I think it repeats the invocation patterns of monotheism, which refer to a specific God by the general name of the concept God, which once referred to the gods as a polytheistic plurality. Who cares? Well, if atheism really cared about honesty in its overcoming of monotheism, I would say that it should overcome theism as much as monism, which is obsessive favoring of any concept that is implicitly singular, just like world. Sure, people talk about many worlds or this world and the world beyond, as in the New Testament, this world and the kingdom of God, and so on, in various texts, traditions. This concept world can be plural, it's not necessarily singular. But I think with the dominance of astronomy, physics, and science, sure, science, great, but it's another naive, unqualified invocation of a singular concept that, even if it opposes theism or Christianity, it still, for some reason, loves a singular thing. It hasn't overcome monophilia. I'd like to suspect, if I fall into patterns that exemplify monophilia, that maybe what I'm saying is compromised. Maybe I'm producing knowledge, the intent of which is not to guide me towards future empowerment, but to keep me in chains that I think I've overcome. And that's kind of just a variety of problems with this statement. The world is music. Why do we care? Why does world have to be one of our key words? Why does our first concept have to be spatial? Okay, but whoever says this actually wants his first concept to be temporal. He prefers historical knowledge, but he communicates in a way that accepts the currencies of the extant spatial power that determines the rules of communication. This artist should really change the rules of communication to more powerfully communicate his message. And he could say that some windful concept is simply first. I think that makes more sense, even if it's harder to communicate. I couldn't say that to someone on the street and expect the message to go viral because it can't be received. So that's kind of the problem. If you really intend to say historical knowledge is more important than mechanical knowledge or optics, or just history is more important than physics, and that intuition of historical cycles is more important to human future guidance than mechanical prediction of motion of relatively uniform things. Many things are going on in this statement, and I think I've really just scratched the surface. I'm looking at my notes here. The video didn't, of course, go as planned, but yeah, don't think really we have so much more to say, and I know nobody's really gotten to this point yet, but yeah, just doubt any sentence that just says the world is whatever, the world is this. And one more thing, the state that the world is music. Let's backtrack to a question: what is the world? Let's remember the world as the rules of communication go today, that this is primarily a spatial concept. It's whereful. If we say what is the world, I think we're actually juxtaposing what and where. We're calling into question whether the interrogative category where should be most valuable among all interrogative categories: where, when, why, whence, whither, etc., and so on. And as we think about values, we're implicitly elevating how much, a kind of economic thinking to the foreground. We're elevating some financial or economic thinking above physics and astronomy. There's so much that could be said, and I probably captured all the key points. For some reason, I'm not saying again what I know abstractly. I'm not quite hearing again in a way that convinces me to dance. But I'm going to leave you, that's just me, with this dreadful video to review in a bit. Maybe we can convert it to a short or two. Goodbye.